These new religious visions held in common was their promoters' use of the manifold opportunities offered by globalization to spread their particular solutions to spiritual or political problems. For this reason, rather than focus primarily on the finer points of theology or ritual, this book pays special attention to the crucial mechanisms of communication and organization that allowed some of these new versions of Islam to wield more influence than others, often in places far from their points of origin. These different models of being Muslim provided their followers with meaning and moral direction, a sense of purpose and collective identity. But the emergence of so many contrasting and ultimately competing religious projects also led to unintended consequences, the scale of which was magnified by the entanglements of a globalized world. By incorporating the incremental multiplication of so many new versions of Islam and the central role played by globalization. The big picture presented here helps us understand how global Islam took shape through the confluence of competing forces and conjunctural circumstances across our planet as a whole. Because this is not a work of theology, I cannot identify a true version of Islam, and should not be viewed as promoting some versions of Islam as more authentic than others. Instead, by adopting the methods social scientists use to study different religions, the approach taken here is to present Islam as what Muslims say it is. Since the wide array of religious activists, organizations, and states have markedly different definitions of Islam, this approach necessarily means accepting, for the purposes of discussion, that there exists a plurality of different versions of the religion without advocating for any one of them. Despite not being a religious book, this volume is written to help both Muslim and non-Muslim listeners recognize the various organizations competing to claim the authenticity and authority of teaching the true version of Islam. The fact remains, however, that there are not only many versions of Islam being promoted around the planet, but also many more of them than previously. Globalization has a lot to do with this state of affairs. A historical approach allows us to see how Islam has been repeatedly reinterpreted across a century and a half of globalization, as increasing numbers of Muslims have claimed the authority to redefine their religion. These modern redefinitions of religion, and the new religious authorities who made them, are central to the emergence of global Islam, which has involved dramatic doctrinal changes. Tracing such transformations enables us to recognize the newness of various versions of global Islam, along with their divergence from traditional ways of being Muslim. More than merely showing change, a historical approach also explains it by revealing the factors that led particular people, in particular places, to construct these new versions of Islam, along with the mechanisms they used to export them across borders of various kinds. These mechanisms, which include new forms of mobility, communication, organization, and finance, as well as globally circulating ideas and ideologies of varied provenance, make up the toolkit of globalization. Global Islam is, then, the outcome of a historical process, the interplay between religion and globalization. To understand this process means examining the mechanisms of movement and communication that enabled some religious actors to propagate their version of Islam more widely than others. Yet, widely should not be taken to mean everywhere, because, as we will hear, competing versions of global Islam moved through a series of changing geographical coordinates as different religions of the planet were opened and closed to the forces of globalization. These spatial parameters are still in flux today. Although by the late 20th century, different promoters of global Islam did eventually reach out to all regions of the world, they did not emerge from